So hi everyone. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of the summer school for their outstanding work. I think it's a significant effort to coordinate a lineup of speakers and discussions and to gather such a number of attendees. So thank you very much for everything. Also thank you to the translator teams there, because they are doing an amazing work these days. Okay, well, so as Lygia introduced, I'm Anaïs Varo. I'm a lecturer and a researcher at the University of Girona. My background is in political science, but my research primarily focuses on the energy sector. And I'm particularly interested in the intersection of democratizing energy governance and creating an inclusive energy model that addresses energy inequalities. So this is more or less the general idea. But beyond my academic work, I'm also an activist, and I think that's an important issue here, because I firmly believe that academic work should be engaged and connected with activism and with transformation goals, let's say. So I think that my activism influenced a lot my research, and it's connected to it. So let me start. With this author. Now I'm gonna borrow some words of Andrea Gors to start the session. And well, one of the hallmarks of modernity is a rapid increase in a specialized professionalization and expert power in both the market and the state sectors. So this growth, as is well known, has reached its climate in the context of the post-industrial society. But if we intersect this trend with the urgent demands imposed by the escalating ecological crisis, we arrive at a point that was already noted by Andrew Gors. So he said that in the context of industrialism and market logic, taking ecological obligations into account translates into an extension of techno-bureaucratic power. So according to Gors, I'm quoting now, this is an approach that stems from a pre-modern outlook, which typically is anti-political. It abolishes the autonomy of the political in favor of the expertocracy by appointing the states and its experts to assess the content of the general interest and devise ways of subjecting individuals to it. So the universal is separated from the particular, the higher interests of humanity are separated from the individual's freedom and capacity for autonomous judgment. So these words, what they mean, that this displacement of politics, this dispossession, is at the heart of the ecosocial crisis that we are facing. So fighting anti-politics, it's not only a need, it's inexcusable. However, the most common approach is still the one that places the relationship between the state and the private in a zero-sum logic. From this point of view, the autonomy of politics might be regained through the return to the state of a part of this decision-making capacity that has been asserted by the market. However, in this talk, I will focus on another axis that has reappeared strongly in the last years, the commons. So today my talk will concentrate on energy commoning and how to build common experiences in the energy sector that both tension and transform the state and the private sphere. So the structure of my talk will be as follows. So in the first part, I will begin with an overview of the energy liberalization process in the European context. This context, I think, it's crucial for understanding all the subsequent discussions. So it's a common ground for us to start the discussion. Following this, I will delve into an epistemological discussion on the conceptualization of energy that I think that is an often overlooked aspect, but it's it's one of the most necessary elements for any project or any policy in the energy sector, not to be thought and to be designed. In the second part, I will place energy commoning literature within the broader context or scholarship of commons, and I will also introduce a particular conceptual approach to energy commons and provide some practical and concrete examples, okay, of different common experiences. And the final part of my talk, you because I wanted to be more practical, not that theoretical, I want to present the two case studies of common experience, both of them in the Catalan context. The first one is Barcelona Energia, which is a public supplier in the city of Barcelona. And the second one are energy communities in general, but we will focus on one specific energy community, the energy community of La Bordeta, also in Barcelona. But this presentation of case studies, I mean, they are interesting experiences, but this presentation will focus on the barriers and obstacles that this type of experience have found. Okay, let's start. So let's start with this first part of the lecture that is called What is Energy? But I'll start with this brief historical revision of the liberalization process of the electricity market in Europe. It's going to be brief, but maybe then we can discuss it more. So let's start with the antecedents. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, the electricity sector was widely regarded as a public service in many countries. For instance, in Spain, electricity at the beginning of the 19th century, more or less, was managed as a municipal service. And we have other experience. For example, in England, there was the model known as gas and water municipalism. But since the electrification process scaled up quickly, especially at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th, most countries controlled their electricity sectors to state-owned companies to allow this electrification. But before going ahead with the liberalization process in Europe, we need to bear in mind that this is a process that cannot be understood as independent of the evolution of the European Union project, both as an economic and political project. So it's important to note that the European Union origins are deeply rooted in an economic alliance centered on the energy sector. So this began with the Schuman Plan, which led to the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community under the Treaty of Paris in 1951. So after that, after the Treaty of Paris, and I'm making a big jump here, the European Union was finally consolidated with the Treaty of Maastricht, 1992. And in this sense, the EU's economic origins aim to create a common market that go pretty close, very close and tied to the acceleration of competition and sector liberalization ideologies. It's in the late 19th and the beginning of the 2000s that Europe experienced a wave of liberalizations and privatizations. This trend was largely driven by the dominance of a neoliberal agenda within the European project. As David Harvey says, he describes this as the neoliberal consensus, which frequently resulted in privatizations and also dispossessions of public assets. This wave directly affected the electricity market and the energy sector in general, being one of the most privatized sectors, along with other infrastructures, for example, telecommunications. It's part of the same way of privatizations. So to explain the liberalization process now in the electricity market, it's useful to use or to divide the timeline in these different energy packages. So each of these energy packages includes several regulations and political decisions that were fundamental to determine the privatization path and also were fundamental in the design of the current energy model. So the two first packages, the one in 1996 and the second in 2003, aim to build the antecedents of the current internal electricity market based on the principles of free market. This package includes steps like separating the different activities of the electricity cycle. And I'm gonna make a jump here. So just to introduce these different activities, because maybe there are people that are not familiar with this terminology. But the different activities of the electricity cycle are these. So we have generation, which refers to electricity production, renewable and non-renewable energy sources. Transmission, so transporting the energy from the point of production through high voltage grid. It's a system base of energy electricity model. Then we have the distribution, the medium and low voltage grid, which transport the energy from the transmission system to the houses or the final users of this energy. And finally, the retail sales. This activity refers to the activity of selling the energy to the final consumer or the final user. So, going back now. So with these two first packages, they firstly obliged the single energy companies, because at first normally state-owned energy companies were operating in all the activities of the electricity cycle, to separate the accounts of the different activities. This was the first step. After that, later the companies had to create spin-offs to operate independently in each of the activities, but still being part of the same group. And this still remains nowadays, that the current scenario is still like that. So here, after these two first package, we arrived to a turning point now in this liberalization process and also in the European Union process or project. So although energy was present in the European project since the beginning, as we have seen, and in several regulations, because several regulations were approved in the first two packages, energy was not formally incorporated as a shared competence until the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009. So the Treaty of Lisbon marked the relaunch of the European integration process, encompassing three distinct projects of Europe that were in tension. No, it was a battle. So we find here the neoliberal project, which aimed to introduce competition, the regulation, and privatization into Europe. We have here the social democratic project, focused on developing the social model, and the neo-mercantilist project, so aim to use the internal market to enable the European champions to compete with external actors. No. So with this battle in place, and this tension between these different projects or these ideas or models for Europe, arrives the third energy package in 2009. This package marked the consolidation of the liberalization process and introduced the first directive reinforcing the market logic in the electricity model, this neoliberal vision, and also introducing some consumer protection rules that we will see later. So basically, with this third package, the state assumed a role as the guarantor of a minimum standard, while the market became the provider, the standard, or the provider by default, with the idea that the state would support the market to limit capitalist externalities. Another novelty of this third package, for example, was the creation of ACER, the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators. That the creation of this agency is actually the reflection of a broader trend in the European Union towards new public management tools, creating these new agencies that had a lot of power, and their main goal was to supervise that free market logics were maintained, that no intervention in the market happened, but they didn't have, or they don't have actually, direct democratic control. So then we arrive at 2019 with the fourth package with the name Clean Energy for All Europeans. This package included decarbonization rules and also other figures, for example, energy communities that we will discuss later. However, in this fourth package, still it maintained a free market orientation, and it even included specific rules to protect the market. For example, referring to these consumer protection measures that were introduced in the previous package, it emphasized that consumer protection should be only achieved through, with social policies or other measures, but in any case, intervening in the electricity pricing. No? See, this idea that protecting the rules of the market should prevail over the rest of needs or the rest of measures. And we finally arrived to the current energy package, let's say. It was announced in 2021 but it's still being implemented, and it has changed a lot since 2021. The name of this package is the Fit for 55 package, and the main goal of this package is to meet EU climate laws requirements to reduce the greenhouse emissions by at least 55% in 2030. But although it wasn't answered in 2021, it changed a lot because several programs were approved on the way. So after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, a new energy plan was approved, the Repower EU plan, which, well, a lot of changes were made, basically aimed to phase out Russian gas from the European electricity energy market. So we are now here. The key criticisms to this last energy package are basically three. So the first one is that the social dimension is considered insufficient. So this new package announced the creation of a social climate fund, but it's not clear how it's going to work, what does it really means, no? And it seems maybe contradictory with these ideas that the consumers' protection or citizens' protection should only take place through social policies, for example. The second one is that the package, again, reinforces a market-oriented approach, so we're still in the same neoliberal line, and that there is a notable democratic deficit due to the centralization of decision-making in the executive, so the European Commission, and also in independent regulatory bodies like the ACER agency that I've mentioned before. So this was like the brief historical revision. But let's connect this timeline now with some thoughts. Well, sorry. Before we continue, I'm not going to go into the detail of how this liberalization process affected each of the countries, but I want to recommend you 3 reports that I think they're quite interesting. The first 2 are more focused on liberalization. Yeah. Okay. Here I am fine because I have my notes and I feel comfortable with them around. Yeah, I'm very short, I'm sorry. And this is it okay? Okay. Okay, so before we continue, I just want to recommend you some further reading if you want to deep in the liberalization process. So here you have 3 reports. The most new one, I think, it's the impacts of the electricity liberalization in the European Union. It was published by Engineering Without Borders and the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. I actually coordinated that report, so I know it pretty well. And, well, if you go deep in the liberalization process, please, I recommend these readings. But, as I said, let me connect now this timeline with some thoughts and some more theoretical reflections. So my lecture in general is not very theoretical, but I want to introduce this here. So, in many countries, including the European countries, privatization does not equate directly to a lack of regulation, okay? And this is very important when we talk about the electricity sector. On the contrary, the liberalization processes in the electricity sector have often involved the approval of numerous rules and norms. So as you have seen in the timeline, we have several energy packages and loads of regulation. What does that mean? No, how can we connect this with more general reflections on privatization processes? So here I want to start with Calpolani. So Calpolani argued that economic activity should not be viewed as a dichotomy between regulation and lack of regulation. He introduced the concept of the double movement that has been widely discussed during these days, I know, in other sessions, so I'm going to follow a little bit the debate, but not that much. So he introduced this concept, which posits that while neoliberal states promote market creation and expansion, they also generate counter-movements aimed at protecting society from these market stabilizing effects. So this results in a complex interaction where the state is instrumental in both fostering markets and regulating them to mitigate their own negative impacts. So this Polanyi's double movements theory highlights how state intervention is essential in market economies. So he asserts that poor laissez-faire of capitalism is unsustainable because it leads to social unrest. So in the context of electricity liberalization, if we apply these ideas, this means that regulatory frameworks are necessary to ensure that market operations do not extremely destabilize social structures. For example, we can see with this with the introduction of consumer protection measures in the European directives after the third package. But here I want to introduce also La Valander thought, that they expanded on Polanyi's ideas by illustrating how a state intervention can manifest in various forms. So they argue that the state actions can be mercantilist, promoting this market, solidaristic somehow, but they also can serve to reinforce market mechanisms and the competition principle. So this third form of intervention, which they refer as neoliberal regulation, involves the state actively shaping and protecting market conditions rather than merely retreating from economic activities. So, according to these authors, neoliberal regulations does not mean less state involvement, but rather a reconfiguration of the state's role. The state takes on a proactive role in ensuring market conditions, often at the expense of democratic control. So this can be seen, for example, with this creation of these independent agencies in the energy sector. That these agencies that oversee the market activities, but without this direct democratic political interference. So I'm gonna make a jump again. So here I'm gonna go quick because I want to go to the most important part of this lecture. But in any public, so I'm a political scientist, and the lens I normally use is policy studies lens. And in any public policy process, identifying and defining, sharing what the policy problem is crucial. So from a constructivist perspective, the idea here is that policy problems are not inherent or factual, so they do not exist in the void, but they are matters of interpretation and social definition. And the thing is that traditionally, the policy definition or problem definition has been overshadowed by other aspects like agenda setting, it's more fancy, or policy analysis, or policy formulation even. However, this problem definition is a crucial step that shapes the entire policy process, both in terms of what type of factors are included, but also in what are the steps, or the path, the actions at the end undertaken. So, with this idea, in recent decades, many social researchers in the fields of energy have repeatedly returned to this fundamental question of what energy is. As we have mentioned before, so the way we conceptualize a problem shapes directly what are the type of solutions or what we can imagine for the future, let's say. And also how, as a society, interact with these energy systems and how we think about and design energy systems and energy models. So here, very quickly, I want to introduce these three concepts or conceptualizations of energy, okay? So the first concept of energy that we present is the one that basically understands electricity supply as a commodity or a consumer good within this market logic. So this conception has been basically the dominant in the recent decades in the context of Europe. So to explore this notion, I want to use the conceptualization of energy proposed by Rui Tissern, which is an author also from Catalonia, which in turn is based on Polanyi's theories on the expansion of commodification. So, Karl Polanyi, in his work, The Great Transformation, tells us about the expansion. The first role is to provide electricity within a market's logic. And then, maybe, we can protect consumers or users or citizens with social policies, but not intervening in the electricity sector. So this is the idea. Finally, we have the energy as a common, okay? So I'm gonna deep on that in the second part of the lecture. So I'm not gonna stop here, and I'm gonna advance. Okay, so the first thing I want to do to present what is my conceptual approach to energy commoning is to situate the debate within the broader discussion on commons. So, as you already know, there are several scholarships in common studies that we should bear in mind when discussing this topic, especially electricity and energy, okay? Because it's a topic that it's quite discussed, no? And between the two big scholarships, let's say. So most of these schools of thought crystallize in the dichotomy between the neo-institutionalist and neo-Marxist approaches to the common. Yes, so the most classical perspective on commons, rooted in this neo-institutional perspective that was first proposed by Ostrom and then her school of thought, takes a good division structure from neoclassical economics as the base, no, to decide what is a common or not. Not only, also, I'm being very simplistic here, I know, not only, but just to situate the debate. And actually, this division responded very well to the characteristics of classical commons, such as water, land, sometimes energy too, but depend. Other theories, on the contrary, draw from a different approach. They do not understand commons as a type of good in a particular socioeconomic context, but commoning as a practice and a social relationship. So in the Marxist Common School of Thought, and here I quote Yolanda Bianchi, so commons are self-governing practices based on just value, direct democracy, and reciprocity that represent a means of defining a path to emancipation of capitalism. So, therefore, commons can be conceived both as fully alternative practice to the state and market, for example, like creating of work cooperatives, sociocultural centers, but also as practices that can democratize public institutions that have led to the creation of common states institutions. For example, water remunicipalization or electricity remunicipalization that we will see one example. So from there, within this neo-Marxist approach, there is also an escission in the Marxist thought. The one represented by Arhard and Negri on the one hand, and the one of Derdot and Laval. All of them built on these theorizations to transform the means of the commons into a coherent political project, the common, this idea of the political principle, understood as a political hypothesis, maybe, we could say. The divergence here is on the role of the state in the political project. So while Hard and Negri claim that the state must be overthrown and replaced by creating new commons institutions, Derdot and Laval adopt a more ambiguous position here. While they also share the need of creating commons institutions, of course, they also believe that it's possible to transform existing state institutions, to directly influence public institutions. So in this latter case, they maintain that applying the principle of the common means giving a prominent role back to the state in the production and distribution of the public, but radically democratizing the current state form by following two principles, self-government and non-appropriability. Self-government means allowing society to directly produce and primarily hold the decision-making power. And non-appropriability means that when the activity or good is produced by state institutions, mechanisms are needed to prevent decision-making exclusively be in hands of the state. So this is the idea. So energy commoning experiences can be considered part of this, this constellation of energy of commoning practices. In the energy sector, as in other areas, the idea of the commons comes from recognizing that the traditional liberal rights-based approach has often fallen short when faced with the private and even public monopolization of collective resources. So here, just to finish this part, I want to talk about these institutions of common and the idea of understanding this, the different common experience as a spectrum, okay? So there is a debate here, lots of papers like trying to decide what is a common, what not, or what should be included. What are the minimum, the basic ingredients, no, that we need to find to say this is a common experience or not. Here, I prefer to understand that institutions of the common reflect this autonomous institutional continuum of political strategies. So now I'm going to provide some non-exhaustive examples. So I want to be clear here, it's non-exhaustive. In this continuum, moving from the more autonomous to the closest, no, sorry, I'm starting the other way. So moving from the closest to the institutions to more autonomous experiences. So for example, what type of energy commoning experience we can find? So the closest to the institution probably is remunicipalization experiences, aiming to transform local state institutions to democratic principles. As example here, we can highlight, for example, the creation of local public suppliers, or even taking back public suppliers that were privatized and they are taken back, not only at the local level. So here you have the example of Barcelona Energia. It's the one that I'm gonna talk in more detail in the last part of the session. But for example, there is another example that is L'Energètica. L'Energètica, it's also a publicly owned energy company in Catalonia, but it's at the regional level, actually at the national level, no, in all Catalonia. And basically, it wants to be an energy company, a second-level energy company with two main goals. So the first one is to produce renewable energy using all the public facilities in the territory, no? Installing solar panels and maybe in the public land, installing different infrastructures, but also to promote energy communities in the territory and not only energy communities, but public installations for energy self-consumption. So it's an interesting experience because they want to be this second-grade public company that can scale up the activity from smaller projects in the territory. Then, of course, a second example is in this continuum could be common public partnerships that have already been presented and debated in several sessions, particularly 2 days ago with Cayeron, that is here, I think. So in this later case, well, there are several cases, but here I'm going to mention this specific case that was the case of a Stuttgart Stadtwerke. Well, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well. But it is one of the largest local utilities in Germany. And I think it's interesting for two reasons, this specific example. I have an image here, but it's in Catalan, I'm sorry, because I didn't have time to translate. But no man, it's okay. So what you're seeing here, it's not what it is today, okay? Because in 2022, it changed. But I still think that it's a good experience or interesting experience at least for two reasons, and it will work like that for 10 years. So it's a public utility that they operate in 3 of the 4 activities of the electricity cycle. So they produce energy, they produce energy, they distribute energy, so they act as a DCO, and they also sell energy, they are retailers. And then the second interesting thing in this project was that in the producing the generation activity, they had a public common partnership with the energy cooperative EYS. No? And it was interesting because it was a common partnership in this part of the utility, and they shared common spaces of decision making, we shared assemblies and autonomous spaces too. So it's interesting. But as I said, it's not anymore like that because in 2022, the public utility bought the shares of this cooperative. So it's not a public common partnership anymore. It's now a public utility. Okay, more examples. Then the second group of experiences refer to the creation of more autonomous projects, let's say. So we have here energy cooperatives, and here we can find millions of examples, Some Energy, it's the largest energy cooperative in Spain. Bristol Energy, for example, that I think that one person from Bristol Energy is around. And, well, I just put RESCOP, that it's a federation of citizen-led energy community, energy cooperatives in Europe. And then we have energy communities, of course, that we will discuss later, so I'm not going to go into the detail of energy communities. And as an example, I put La Comunitat Energètica La Bordeta, that it's a case I will present. Okay, so let's go for the cases. So we have time for the debate later. So, as I said, I'm going to present two case studies, or two cases, so we can debate on concrete and particular cases. So the first one is Barcelona Energia, the second are energy communities, one in particular, but the reflections are more general, let's say. I'm presenting this case, so the first thing I want to say that I don't believe in ideals or in this idea that only the best practice need to be shared. So also that not that good practices need to be discussed, dissected, even to learn. So and Barcelona Energy it's one case because it has some light, some reds, but also some shadows. It's important to bear in mind. So Barcelona Energia is a public supplier. It's a local public supplier in Barcelona. It was created in 2018, and right now it's the largest fully public local utility for the commercialization of energy in Spain. Okay, so it's the largest one. So the public operator began its activities in 2018. So at first, its activity was to supply electricity for municipal facilities, first in the city of Barcelona, then it also expanded to other municipalities in the metropolitan area of Barcelona. And it was not until 2019 where they also opened the offer, or they offer energy for the citizens too, both in Barcelona and in the metropolitan area. And they also started this activity of management of self-produced energy in the electricity market. So basically, Barcelona Energia, with the idea of the different activities of the electricity cycle, intervenes mainly in the supply phase, so the retail phase. And it has only a symbolic, let's say, position in this generation activity. So it actually, it doesn't generate energy, but it manages the self-generated energy. So to situate this project, the creation of Barcelona Energia took place in a context of urban and municipal transformation in Barcelona after the victory of Barcelona en Comú, the citizens-led platform, in 2015 in the municipal elections. So this phenomenon was part of an European and global wave of reaction and resistance to the neoliberal policies and the effects of the 2008 financial crisis. That also included processes of remunicipalization of basic services, so water in other cities, and electricity in this case. So, but the thing is that in the case of Barcelona, the creation of Barcelona Energia was announced as a flagship policy, so as a very strong policy of the new Barcelona en Comú government, and later was claimed as an emblematic achievement. So they presented it, or Barcelona Energia was presented as a key tool for the ecological transition, I'm quoting here, that the city needs to move towards an urban model independent of the electricity oligopolies against energy sovereignty. So they were using pretty strong and key words, let's say. In this sense, Barcelona Energia represented this challenge to the existing political and economic structures in the city, betting on reclaiming of this idea of reclaiming spaces and infrastructures to meet basic needs. So I'm going to go a little bit more in detail in the governance structure of Barcelona Energia, because I think it's not well known, and it provides some key elements to understand the the advantage of this type of model and the barriers. So, due to the structural limitations derived from the austerity regulations in Spain that limited public activity after the financial crisis in 2008, and that lasted until almost uh, 3 years ago, actually, or 2 years ago. And also because of all the competition protection laws, Barcelona Energia was not created as an independent company, public utility, but it was created as a branch of an existing public company, Tersa, which is a waste management company. Okay, this is the first thing that it's important to understand because, of course, when they present the project of Barcelona Energia, it's not that obvious, no, this interrelation, but it's somehow important. So this means that the capacity of Barcelona Energia to create their own democratic and decision-making space is reduced. So in terms of a structure, Barcelona Energia decisions are made through the board of directors of Tersa, this other company, this bigger company. And the thing is that the legal form of Tersa is a public limited company that operates under the Spanish commercial law. And that means that legally the decisions are made by a board of directors with several representatives of all the entities that are part of Tersa. It is still a publicly owned company, but with a quite, let's say, traditional form of operating. Despite this limitation, Barcelona Energia, from the beginning of its creation, they were, or they try to incorporate democratic elements into their structure. So they created the Authors Council. So what is the Authors Council? It's a council, a non-binding council that aims to influence the decisions on the supplier, but as I said, it's non-binding. It works mainly online using the Plataforma Decidim and holds a regular General Assembly per year in a hybrid format. Okay, and basically the duties of this Research Council are three. So proposing Barcelona Energy orientations and priorities, prioritizing projects, helping to define awareness, education policies, etc., and also in participating in the definition of the proposals for the tariffs and the investments of the company. Okay, so this is the big picture, now let's say, of Barcelona Energia. Let's go to discuss a little bit the challenges now that this type of experience, or that we can learn from this type of experience. So some challenges. The first one is that Barcelona Energia, being the largest public utility, local public utility in Spain, it still has to play in the same field as big corporations. Okay, this happened because of the European regulations. Barcelona Energia has to operate as a retailer, as any other retailer, in the market. So it's competing with these big corporations. And still, tariffs depend on the wholesale energy market, which is mostly controlled by big corporations, limiting their capacity to influence in the energy system. I'm not going to detail how the wholesale market works, but maybe then we can discuss it. And one of the consequences of this fact is also the lack of tools to address energy poverty and energy precarity, for example, from Barcelona Energia. It depends on the context, but in the Spanish context, all of them know, but most of the main energy poverty measures are articulated through the 5 big companies that are called companies of reference, let's say. And these 5 big companies are private companies. We're talking about Iberdrola, and this from the Enel Group, etc. So we're talking about that. So all the other retailers, even if they're public or cooperatives or no matter what, they cannot access to this system of users protection, of energy poverty measures. The second challenge is, or obstacle in the case of Barcelona Energia, is the weak participatory governance. So commercial law regulations oblige Barcelona Energia to be governed using this private company structure, so being part of TERSA with these quite rigid structures. And so they try to solve it, creating this Assurance Council, that it's a very interesting experience, but it is still non-binding. And this weak participatory governance not only refers to the specific decisions of Barcelona Energy as a public supplier, but also the idea, especially from social movements in the city, when Barcelona Energy was created during the meetings that took place between the city council and social movements to decide how the public supplier would be. The idea was that the public supplier could not only be an interesting place to decide on how we can manage the energy to this new public supplier, but also to decide on the city's more general, broader energy policies. And that it's not happening. So the Users' Council decisions or opinions, because it's non-binding, are restricted to the specific activities of the public supplier and not anymore. And this is also a limit now in this democratic perspective. The idea was, for example, that the idea was it not to be a users' council, but a citizens' council, maybe. Okay. Another third challenge is what I call it business as usual, is that since the structure of Barcelona Energy is not fully autonomous and the citizens-led users' council is not binding, at the end, the public supplier depends on the political willingness of the parties governing the city. This is a peril in terms of regression and coming back to a business as usual model. But from the interviews that I have done during the last years regarding this project, because I've been following it since the beginning, so since 2018, it's also true that, for example, many of the people that were implicated in the project during the Mayor Colau's mandate, they say that also maybe being part of this bigger company, TERSA, could be also an advantage in the way that it's more difficult for the current government, but it's not Barcelona en Comú anymore, the Socialist Party right now, was maybe an advantage because it's more difficult for the current government to take them out, or to shut off Barcelona en Comú project. However, and thinking about Barcelona Energy as a tool of transformation, it is also important that even with its limitations, the public supplier represents an opportunity in two ways. Okay? So first, it is an opportunity for a public institution to gain the know-how and the knowledge necessary to operate in the energy market. And this is important, because this is a barrier that many cities have found in their ways or in their projects of municipalization, for example. At the same time, it represents an opportunity, a gap, a bridge, through which to introduce more democratic and transparent ways of operating. And finally, it is also a chance to create alliances with other public institutions or public companies, let's say, such as the Energética that I mentioned before. Because, for example, in this case, a strategic alliance with the Energética between Barcelona Energy at the metropolitan level and the Energética at the Catalan level would allow Barcelona Energia maybe to be the retailer of all the energy generated by the Energética, or the other way, no? So at the end, this combination of this commons-oriented experience, let's say, can help us to scale up the projects, especially in the energy sector, which is a sector that needs to scale up very quickly. Okay, the second case I want to present is energy communities. So I know that the third session of this morning is all about energy communities, so I'm not going to go into detail here. Well, I only want to say three things to present them. The first one is that energy communities are not new. So community-based forums has existed for a long time, no? But the introduction of European level regulation recognizing the figures of energy communities, this is a novelty, no? And this has meant that they have increased a lot. So according to the European regulation, energy communities are this is the definition, the big one. Open, voluntary, and autonomous groups controlled by their members, which may be individuals, small and medium business, also including here associations, cooperatives, for example, or also local authorities. So municipalities, public institutions can be part. The main objectives of an energy community must be environmental, economic, or social, for its members or for the territory in which it's located, and not economic profitability. So from a commons lens, the ingredients that need to be present in an energy community to align itself as an energy common experience, let's say, would be this democratic basis, these social and environmental objectives, and they need this connection, no, with the territory. So I would say that this is important. So in a more specific way, a typical example, this is a pretty typical example, okay? Energy communities are super diverse. So I've not specifically mentioned it in the previous slide, but they can operate in all the activities of the energy cycle. So this is a novelty. Remember that with the third package, they imposed this separation that one only entity could not operate in all the activities, but now energy communities can. So this is important. So this example of the Comunitat Energètica La Bordeta, it's an energy community in Barcelona. I'm not going to go in detail, but it serves as an example to illustrate how a typical energy community is. So normally, we find a community that can be composed by citizens, a small and medium business, associations, cooperatives, and municipalities. In the case of la Comunitat Energètica La Bordeta, the community is composed by citizens of the neighborhood of La Bordeta. So La Bordeta is a neighborhood in Barcelona next to Sants. No? But they also include, for example, cooperatives of the neighborhood of Sants and La Bordeta. They also include housing cooperatives. Actually, most of the installations right now are in the buildings of housing cooperatives in Barcelona, and another type of actors too. So we have a common resource or infrastructure or service related to energy. So it's not only about solar panels or other material infrastructures, they can also be about other activities. Like, I don't know, energy services or whatever. In this case, the resource here is the common ownership of infrastructures and the participation in these infrastructures. And in the case of La Bordeta, these are, I think that right now, 3 installations of solar panels in 3 different buildings. I don't know if the third one is already installed, but yeah. And then in terms of governance, any energy community needs to have a democratic, open, controlled by their members, a governance system, or a set of rules to allow this to happen. In the case of La Bordeta, they work as a cooperative. So they started first as a group, affinity group, let's say. Then they evolved to an association, and they are now a cooperative. And the decisions are made in an assembly, and they have then commissions and working groups for the several topics. So here, some challenge now of energy communities. I'm going to go quickly here because I want some time for the debate. But what are the challenges with energy communities? I would say that the first and biggest challenge, and one of the most important for me, it's the inclusivity challenge. So I've not mentioned it, but most energy communities projects, or the typical case at least, they need investments now to install, to buy all the solar panels, to install them, etc. These investments represent an economic and financial barrier for many people to participate. So there are already several papers that are debating this issue about the class divide, no? So what happens with the class divide in this type of projects? So we can see this class divide in terms of who can invest or not, who can participate in these projects, but not only in terms of financial resources, but also in terms of social capital, environmental awareness, etc. It is also exacerbated by the fact that, for example, subsidy systems for energy poverty obligate, in most cases, households in situation of energy poverty to continue the relation to big suppliers, okay? So these are barriers that need to be considered. Another element to be considered here is a knowledge gap regarding how the energy system works. And here, I'm going back to the beginning of this session, no? With the quote of Andrew Gorse about expertocracy. So many initiatives of energy communities and many public initiatives to support energy communities are often focused or more centered on the technical issue. No? So how can you install? But they often oversaw or they don't take into account the governance and decision-making factors, the social factors, and these are also important and are barriers. Barriers for the inclusivity, mostly. So the second challenge here is the role of the municipality of the public institution. So as I said before, the regulation establishes that municipalities can take part, might be part of energy communities. A challenge is in this continuum that we were talking about, from more autonomous experiences to more more close experiences to the institution. What role should the institution have? No, so they should be maybe a facilitators or active members of these energy communities. And here, for example, it's interesting to debate what is the potential of energy communities for these public common partnerships. No? And to finish, I want to mention two more challenges here that I think that they have generated the second one, but the first one too, generated a lot of debate. So the first one is also, of course, corporations work and think very quickly. And there is a peril of co-optation by big energy companies. No? In this sense, in the last years, with the blossoming now of these energy communities initiatives, we have seen how big energy companies have also strategized how to take advantage of this figure. So we can see how big companies offer services of support for the creation of energy communities, and the interesting part, because I'm calling it community washing. Let's say, not like greenwashing, but community washing. But most of the times, what they are offering is these digital platforms, let's say, with this introduction of the logics of platform economics into energy communities model, so like Uber or Globo or whatever, like offering these services, but eliminating all the political part of the projects. No? So what they offer basically is, okay, I'm installing the solar panels, I'm managing all this stuff for you, but they basically eliminate the part of the social, of the community, of this political part. And the final challenge would be the urgency of the current climate emergency crisis. So, at least in Catalonia, but I'm sure that in many territories in Europe right now, there is a passionate debate in the environmental movements, in environmental social movements, on what to prioritize. A fast and exponential growth of renewable energy infrastructures, maybe prioritizing larger and more intensive energy infrastructures, or prioritizing, with the idea of that we need to be super quick to reduce emissions and to transition to green energy, or to slow down and to better plan the transition, and maybe bet for these smaller projects that, of course, they need to be cooked in a slowly way, because we need to remember that energy democracy requires time. Any form of democracy requires time. And this is a debate that, at least in Catalonia, it's very lively right now. So maybe we can debate it now. With this, I'm finishing the lecture, and, well, Now, I would like for you to participate, maybe to share what your thoughts are, and if you have any questions, so you can ask me. Thank you very much for listening to me. And it's a pleasure to be here.